Lieutenant Hector Ilario is living proof that Starfleet Academy produces the finest fighter pilots in the galaxy. Miles and Julian are very serious about their leisure activities, and forensic psychology wasn't exactly Ezri's favorite subject at the Academy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 13, Field of Fire, directed by Tony Dow, written by Mr. Robert Hewitt Wolfe. And what do you know? Very special guest today, very, very special guest, Mr. Robert Hewitt Wolfe has returned to The Seventh Rule.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Trying to stay cool in Los Angeles. Otherwise good.
Everybody at home, we are recording from a very hot day in LA. This episode came out in February 10th, 1999. Where were you, everybody? Cirroc, you said it. You said you love this episode, huh?
Yeah, I was watching this episode just really intensely. I thought it was excellent. Robert, this is your comeback after you had left the show, right?
Yes.
My special, it's like my special guest appearance more than my comeback.
I guess you're right. It's like and just the return of your style and your just great storytelling. I loved it.
Yeah. Can we talk about that? Because you left after 5 seasons. You were Ira Steven Bear's writing partner, or so it seems, because every episode written by you was with him, and with him is with you. But then you left for greener pastures, or just because you had 5 years and you wanted to try something new, or what was the deal there?
Mostly the latter. I 5 years. I was we did 26 a year, and because I was working with Ira. We were just doing a lot of writing, nonstop. And I was tired, man. I was just kind of burned out. And I'd also sold a pilot and a feature. And so I wanted to work on those. And it was just that. It was really just like I was kind of done at the time, and they dragged me off as a wounded officer for a reason.
That's right.
It was all very amicable. In fact, the truth is, I had a contract for the 6th season, and I asked Ira to let me out of it, and he just, as long as you don't go turn around and work on a different show, that's fine. So. Yeah, I was working on this TV movie pilot, and then the feature film, and I had a couple other projects over the course of the 2 years between when I left and when I came back to do this.
Did you have the idea that you would probably be coming back to kind of do something like this, or
no? They asked me. They were just, hey, you want to do one? Yeah. They asked me if I wanted to do one. Pretty sure they had at least the bones or most of the story done, and they just like, hey, we need someone to write this one. Would you do it as a freelancer? And I had a break in the other stuff I was working on, and it doesn't take too long to write one of these. It's like 3-4 week commitment. So I said, sure.
Is that like the band coming back together? Is that the feel of it when you come back?
A little bit. I mean. Yeah, it was fun. It was very fun to do. I mean, obviously, Brad and David were there, which was great. I love those guys. And it was really nice to see everybody and hang out and work with them again. And the part of the attraction for me too was also I'd never written Ezri,
Right.
So it was a new character to write, which was fun, and that to me was also like part of the attraction of doing it. To be honest, they asked me to write one in the big final arc, and I said I shouldn't do it, because in those 10 episode, that giant 10 episode arc, I just felt like there was no way I was going to be able to do it justice, So that one I passed on. But this one seemed good. It was a standalone, which is easier to freelance. And it was about Esri, like I said, who I'd never really written. And so, yeah, it was fun. It was really fun to do.
So before Ira called you and said, "We need you, Wolfie," before he did that, did you have any thoughts in those 18 months that you might come back or you would come back, or did it feel very out of the blue?
It felt a little out of the blue, actually. I mean, I obviously I left on good terms with everybody. I love all those guys, and I love the show. But I figured, once I had parachuted out of there, that was probably going to be it. And I was okay with that. Like, that was the deal, right? I was leaving to go do other things. And there was other things too, which is like, this is going to get really deep in the weed on how a TV writing staff works. But, there's ranks. You rise up the ranks in the TV writing staff, just like in the military. And I season 5, I was producer, which is like, sort of in the middle somewhere. It's, as I would tell my dad, it's sort of like a major, maybe lieutenant colonel. But there was no one below me. Every time I got promoted, I was still the lowest ranking guy on the staff, So I wasn't, and it wasn't really an ego thing, but I wasn't really learning to sort of work with other writers below that reported to me.
Yeah, man.
I still always was on that show, going to report to everybody. And so I wasn't, except when I worked with freelancers, I wasn't really learning those skills. And, it was a great place to learn how to be a writer, Star Trek. But if you were a writer, it wasn't a great place to learn how to be a executive producer, showrunner, because, Rick kind of was very protective over post and the set and stuff like that. And on some shows, that's a very big part of the head writer's responsibility. But I wasn't really getting any chance to really work with editors or directors that closely, or with the cast, like.
We're talking about Rick Berman, right?
Yeah. Rick. Which, it's just the way the show worked, and it worked great, right? So that was another reason I left. I wanted to try to learn how to sort of be my own boss a little bit more, and hopefully to supervise other people, which I eventually got to do, but I didn't get to do it until after Deep Space Nine was off the air. So, oops. Oh
well. I have a question about how you approach this character, because I feel like the Dax symbiont character never really had this level of in-depth kind of analysis about the conjuring up of past lives and how they can interact with them. I think that was really one of the things I took away from this as well.
It was fun. I mean, I honestly, guys, I cannot remember the details of how everything there was come up with, but I remember that
it was only 25 years ago, man. What's the
25 years?
February 15th,
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I don't really remember a lot of the detail, and probably I wrote the script 2 months before that, right? So I was probably writing that script either like before or right after Christmas break or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the appeals of this was to really dig into Esri Dax and how she was dealing with this stuff. We'd sort of established some of the Trill stuff in the previous seasons, as far as like
Duran. Yeah.
Duran was an established thing, and the idea that she could kind of like talk to her other selves or whatever was somewhat established. We didn't really make a lot out of it, but this was just a chance to really, really dig into it and do that ritual and all that other kind of stuff, which was fun. It was a little Silence of the Lambs, right? Except that the serial killer was in her belly.
Right.
Was part of her.
I did
kill people too, which was fun.
I did get the Silence of the Lambs vibe to it, but with a very interesting twist that I thought made it unique in its own special way. Particularly the schizophrenic part of it. At some point, I was thinking maybe she's killing people.
When I first saw it, I was wondering if she was like the Tyler Durden or what. Like
that would have been there. That would have been really fun.
But then it's like, how do you come back from that afterwards?
Yeah, right.
I don't
then
think
she's
we could have
criminal.
done that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. But I was tempted to go there in my mind. I was thinking, is she actually doing this in her sleep, or is this, other symbiont, this other host taking over her body and conducting this without her consciously knowing about it? That was something that crossed my mind.
I mean, the fun thing about Esri was, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember, she wasn't really supposed to be the host, right? So this isn't really how she saw herself or her life unfolding. And so she's kind of saddled with this guy in a way that beyond how even Jadzia would have had to deal with him. Like Jadzia kind of bought this house, and
she was prepared.
She had way inherited it. And so the problems inside of it, Jadzia was a little more cool with, because she'd made that decision. Whereas Esri was more just there's some messed up stuff going on inside of me sometimes. So it was fun to do that way.
Yeah, Esri was, as far as we know, the only Trill that's ever had a symbiont added to her without any preparation or training, or was it even her decision? I think it must have been.
I mean, you probably signed that donor card when you're in high school on Trill,
that receiver card, right?
In case of emergency, I am willing to be a host.
That's right.
Sure. But you never think it's going to happen, I would assume.
There were a lot of elements that I thought that somebody who had to be versed about certain things would have to know about. One of them was specifically the rifle, and the use of this the rifle and the projectile, kind of the methodology which you kind of assigned to it. I felt
was that your military dad?
Yeah,
probably. I don't even know. Yeah, it's probably my military dad and all that kind of stuff. The idea of thinking about how would a sniper work in Star Trek? How would that work? And the idea of a transporter and X-ray goggles, and a regular old bullet.
That was fun.
That was fun, and I just thought that was a really cool way to have a serial killer that was, really hard to find, using a really smart piece of technology. But it also said something about the killer, which I kind of liked too. This idea that he doesn't get a thrill out of this. He's a Vulcan. He's not capable of, or he's trained in such a way to control those emotions. So he doesn't enjoy the experience the way Duran did. I think Duran was an up close and personal kind of dude with a knife, and that's not who this guy is. This guy is kind of he's deeply, deeply screwed up.
Yeah.
But he's still a Vulcan, and he'd still rather kill you from 1,000 feet away than see your, than be in your face when it happens.
Because logic demands it, he said. And I believe he had the trauma of being one of 6 survivors out of 1,250 on a ship. I didn't write the which ship down, I don't think. But I mean, that's, a human would be riddled with guilt and would have survivor's guilt and all these kind of things. And a Vulcan, I guess, handles those emotions differently or suppress those emotions differently.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what he's, in a weird way, logic demands it. Well, I do like that line. I can't remember whether that was mine or not, to be honest. But he is in emotional turmoil. He is really, really suffering, this guy. And, Vulcan training and the sort of philosophy dictates that, Vulcans do feel, they just don't express their feelings, right? And they cling to this cold logic. And that just was all completely failing him, I think, is really what we were trying to say. And that in war, even Vulcan, this war is so bad that even a Vulcan can get this bad. That was kind of also what we were trying to say. It was part of the showing the damage that the war was doing to just everyday, rank and file Starfleet, regular people, that kind of
even the toughest.
Yeah, even the toughest.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Peter Falk and Columbo. I've talked about it on this podcast before.
Every episode.
But I just love the way those episodes unfold, and particularly Peter Falk's way of kind of deducing what happens. But that's one of the things that I had the element of while watching this as well, is this clever way of constructing a killing so that it wasn't just boring to watch. Some guy just shoots somebody and it's just, it's not that much of a mystery behind it. That's the complexity. So when you are constructing that, at what point did you say, "Oh my God, this is brilliant, beam the bullet"? Because I was thinking A+. Wow, this guy said beam the bullet. That was like amazing. How do you construct it in a way where you have to make something so difficult that it's not easy for the viewer to kind of solve?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you just have to kind of figure out that puzzle box, right? This is essentially what they call a locked room mystery, right? Guy was alone in his quarters, doors was shut, no one walked in, someone shot him. Now, in a Star Trek universe, obviously, there's a lot of ways to do that, and that's what I was really trying to come up with, was like a cool way to do a locked room mystery in this universe, but still have it be investigatable, right? I still wanted it to have enough logical kind of consistency and like to be, so it is a physical weapon. I wanted it to not be like magic. It's just a super cool weapon that he's using, right? And that's how I constructed that. It's really interesting though, because of course, subsequently I was 5 years on Elementary writing murder mysteries all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm watching this one going like, I could do better. The mystery's okay. It's fine.
You're like, I've gotten better since then.
I've definitely gotten better. Like the problem for me with this mystery, and look, it's a fun episode. Like, I'm happy with the way it turned out. And again, I can't remember for the life of me what's mine and what's anybody else's. So I'll take credit for anything or give credit to everybody else for everything. I think the gun was me. I don't remember. I really don't. But like now as like a guy who's written like 5 years on a really, really carefully constructed murder mystery show. The biggest problem for me is there's no play along, what we call play along. In other words, at no point do you meet the killer until you meet the killer and and in that moment she knows he's a Vulcan. She's starting to look at Vulcan. She has a meeting with this guy in the turbo lift and she realizes, oh my God, this is the killer, which is a great thriller moment. It's like, oh fuck, I'm I'm in the elevator with a killer, but it does, as a mystery, it's a little sketchy, to be honest. In this sort of like how we would have done it on Elementary, or how I would do it if I were going to do it today.
Well, how would you do it if you did it today?
Well, I probably would have structured it a little more rigorously, and that, like, I love all the character beats and stuff, but like I probably would have wanted her to get into the mystery quicker and her to do more, maybe with the help of Odo, to do more of the sort of like, we never get to see her talk to any suspects, right? I mean, we just see that one guy who's a weapons collector, he's a gun nut. He's a Starfleet gun nut. But like, even he is not like, we don't know why Odo thinks it's, you know what I mean? It's like the scenes don't hit each other like little dominoes, like they're supposed to in a murder mystery, in a really, really carefully crafted one. But whatever. I mean,
so you would have introduced the killer earlier and kind of had her following him, or maybe he's part of the investigation to some degree.
Yeah, I would have at least like shark finned him at some point, and it would have been nice to have met a couple other legitimate suspects, like for her to identify that guy, not Odo, not for it to happen randomly to her, but for her to identify him, and then for the fact that they identified him to help us understand why it isn't him. I mean, Odo both like finds him, arrests him, and alibis him all off screen, Yeah. And look, again, like, the truth is, the real fun of the episode is Ezri and Duran, right?
Right.
And so, like, I'm sure, Cirroc, you're like watching it, not caring about any of that, right? And that's fine. That's good. Like, you shouldn't have to care about that stuff. It's just me watching it after being on a Sherlock Holmes show for all those years, going like,
Yeah.
could do better.
Well,
that's interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of the Duran, I thought he did a fantastic job at his performance in this episode. Yeah, the actor who played him was awesome and very good at kind of goading her and just trying to get that out of her. I thought
he never went over the top. Like he never felt like a full on monster, which I think really kind of helped in a way.
Yeah.
You know, he just like the gun's not loaded. You know, that was a really fun moment. You know, that he was trying to go to deploy the trigger and then he says the gun's not loaded, but
is it?
Yeah. Well, also but just getting her to pull the trigger would be such a huge victory for him. You know what I mean? That's why he didn't tell her until after she put the gun down. So yeah, I don't remember if it's this. We saw Duran before, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, I was trying to think that as well. I'll look it up.
I can't remember.
But he definitely didn't stand out like to the degree that he did in this episode. If we did see him at all.
Well, I know he was in the episode where everybody was possessed by an aspect of Dax, right? But that means he was played by somebody else, and I can't remember who. Like it might have been Odo, who played Duran. I should have.
Odo had the frizzy hair. He played Kazan, I think, with the frizzy hair.
You're right.
Curzon,
Curzon. He played Curzon. You're right. So I can't remember. Was it Sisko? I can't remember who got Duran.
Okay,
I have a question though.
So Duran, real quick. This was this actor's only portrayal of Duran. So I guess it was somebody else playing him, like
or
the
it
leads.
was just we never really saw him. Or was it an extra or something like that?
Yeah.
The good thing it was season 1, right? Facets? Was it Facets?
I think so. Yeah. I think that was season 1.
It's either season 1 or season 2, and so no one's going to remember anymore.
And you addressed it a little bit. Lee McCloskey. Lee McCloskey.
I thought you addressed it in this episode when you said that Jadzia had repressed his memories. So you kind of addressed the fact that he wasn't brought to the forefront of the Dax mind.
Yeah, I mean, I did always think that was an interesting part of Dax, you know, and we spent so much time on Curzon, you know,
right,
and so little time on any of her other previous lives. And this was always the one that I thought was like, this guy's, you know, interesting. And also he does bring a tool set, you know, he does bring a certain set of skills.
He does. I mean, he had the knowledge. It was that, like you said, the Silence of the Lambs. But I do remember that we did deal with Dax in a different way, and that was in the episode where I think she was being tried for past murders.
Yes,
and they were.
That's what I was thinking about. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking about too. As far as the past host being a murderer and her being guilty or for that, right? Or whether she was guilty or innocent. That was kind of the concept of that episode, which was really good as well.
Yeah, is that Dax? That was like a first season episode too, right? The episode was called Dax.
I think so. I think it was like episode 4 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a good one though. It was like it was right before. It was like I think they were shooting that as I came on or something like that, and I remember it being like, "Wow, okay, this is really good," you know. And yeah, I sometimes like people kind of bag on the first season, but I do think that there's a number of really good episodes in the first season. And I think Dax is one of them. I mean, it's not one that people think about when they think about the good episodes. Everyone's always talking about Duet,
Duet.
And look, I mean, Duet is spectacular, right? But there's also like other really solid episodes in there. And I think Dax is kind of one of them. And I guess this is kind of a sequel to it in a way.
Okay. So Dax was season 1, episode 7.
Right.
I feel so stupid for having said 4 or 5. Please forgive me, everybody at home. They're yelling at their screens right now.
Just blocking past prologue out of your mind is what you're doing.
Yeah, maybe. So we're going to hit our break in just a second here. But, Robert, I want to, on the other side, I want to ask you about Davy Crockett. Because somebody clearly has a lot of Davy Crockett knowledge when on the writers team or you. So I'm going to definitely
I'm going to leave it as a cliffhanger too. I can totally tell you who it is, but.
All right. So everybody stick around. I mean, you're going to get all your Davy Crockett needs on the other side. So don't go anywhere. This is the big time. Stick around. We'll be right back on the 7th Rule.